So let's give a warm pachyderm welcome to Mr. Alan Cobb and Mr. William Wilk.
So, yes, I've known Carl more than 30 years, and we've been on the same side of virtually every issue. I can't think of an issue we were not on the same side. And so it's a pleasure to be here. I'm a native Wichitan, haven't lived here in a long time, but I grew up very proud. Wichita Southeast, Golden Buffalo, Southeast graduate, and Wichita State graduate. And when I was at Wichita State, ORU was a big baseball rival. So, because they were very, very good. In fact, I had a high school classmate that played for ORU, and they were always very, very good. So, thank you for being here. This is not going to be an impressive presentation. We're going to be kind of nuts and bolts about things that the chamber focused on, and then we'll be happy to take questions about non-business issues, just from political stuff. And I see Joy, and I want to recognize candidates, not just elected officials. I was just talking to someone about this on the way down. I have been a candidate one time, and I've been asked about it. And when I'm asked about it recently, I put a fake gun to my head. Why would anybody do this? Therefore, we have to applaud the folks that are willing to get into the arena. So, Joy, thank you. I know everybody here knows you. Applause, please. That is not an endorsement of the Pachyderm Club, right? So, I thought our mics were working here. So we had a really good legislative session, we the chamber, which I would think that all of you would say that's good for you as taxpayers and either employees of a business or business owners. And I would say, I know I'm going to state the obvious, elections matter. They matter a lot. And unfortunately, I should have asked, is there any press here? Okay, John, I trust you. Because Dion occasionally comes to these, which I have a professional back and forth with Dion, but I'm going to say some things that I otherwise wouldn't. Laura Kelly, her being elected for 2 terms has a consequence, a negative consequence. And thankfully, though, we had enough votes in the House and the Senate to override her vetoes, a lot of them. And in fact, I think Laura Kelly is a good person. She is not AOC, she's not Gavin Newsom, but I almost feel sorry for her. How many vetoes have been overridden? It's like, what's the point of being governor? You can't get anything done. Now, she still has her administration. But the reason those vetoes were overridden is the legislature got better. And even though there were folks that thought that the Republicans would lose seats, which I was concerned about, the Republicans gained seats in the House and the Senate. And it's also hard to keep any caucus together, any group together. Just think about your family. You get all your cousins together, can you get 2/3 of your cousins to agree on anything? And what was the best Thanksgiving meal? That's a good one. But elections have consequences, and we're able to, the collective we, override a lot of her vetoes. And again, our focus is business and fiscal issues, but there were a lot of stuff that I think is good for Kansas that got overridden. I do read the Wichita Eagle, and the op-ed from the Wichita State professor about why supermajorities are bad, and because they don't have to compromise. And, well, how about the governor compromising so she doesn't get overridden? That's part of the deal too, right? Like, I would guess, knowing Republican leaders, they don't really like risking a veto override because it's hard to get everybody together, as I mentioned. They'd be willing to compromise on something that she would sign. She hasn't always been in that mode. So probably the biggest thing is a legislation that was passed because of a veto override that's going to lower Kansas to 4% income tax as a flat rate over time. And it's very, very responsible. It's going to base on revenues. As revenues go up, it's going to buy down tax rates. And William might be able to talk more about that it is good for Kansas. We're in a competitive environment. And before this tax bill, we always like to look at our bordering states, right? Colorado, Nebraska, Missouri, Oklahoma. Well, if you look at all the states that we border and all the states that they border, so we're into 17 states from Arizona to Illinois, we had the highest individual income tax rate, corporate income tax rate, except for New Mexico. That's not good to be in the top 10, right? And I've had some frustrating conversations with Republicans. It's like, this is just not competitive. And the day that the veto was overridden at 4%, Mississippi passed a bill that went to 0. So the point is, we have to continue to work and be hard. We cannot just stand still. And I would say some legislators can get not very defensive. Well, we've done all this stuff. You have to keep doing it because every other state is doing stuff, whether it's workforce, taxes, regulations. Single factor apportionment has to do with companies that have multiple sites across the country, and then how do they get taxed in Kansas. There were some winners and losers. Most states have gone to the single factor, and this is going to save a lot of Kansas companies that are capital intensive, meaning equipment, whether they're headquartered here or not, a lot of money. And the states that have to pay a little higher taxes, the companies, they understand it because they got this break somewhere else. So anything you want to add? William and I did not prepare for this, so we've never done this tag team.
No, I was just saying, as Alan was saying, you have to go to New Mexico to see a higher tax rate than our surrounding states. The Oklahoma governor called for tax cuts at the beginning of their session. Arkansas Governor Huckabee Sanders, she has been calling for tax cuts continuously to remain competitive with Texas. So getting to 4% puts us at the lowest rate in the region, and it's a responsible way to do it because everything that comes in over revenues for state income tax receipts, that has to be used to buy down personal income tax rates, and then it shifts over to corporate. So it's a very good, responsible way to lower taxes to get us into a competitive rate.
Yeah, I enjoy some banter on Twitter. I don't do as much as I used to, but a lot of the folks who just didn't like it were saying, oh, this is Brownback 2.0. And without getting into the merits of the Brownback tax cuts, it's like, and I just ask on Twitter, explain how this is the same. We're lowering a rate, not getting to 0. And one thing, I'm glad, William, you mentioned the Oklahoma governor had kind of the same message as I did about we have to be competitive with our states. You know what state he left out about being competitive with? Kansas. Because all the other states have already been lower, or they have lowered, or they're on their pathway. Iowa, Nebraska, Arkansas in particular, and of course Texas has been at 0, Wyoming's at 0, South Dakota's at 0. Again, the states that surround our states, that surround our surrounding states. For the blue or purple state of Colorado, I believe they're at 4.3. So we're going to be lower than them, but that is not a high income tax. Illinois is at a flat rate of 4.5, and so they were higher than we were. So these are good things, but we have to keep working. Legal reform. Did anybody in this room know that there are hedge funds that invest in plaintiffs' litigation? No, nobody. Okay, this is a weird deal. I'm a lawyer. I keep my license current. I don't know why. In case I need to sue somebody, I guess. And I didn't know about this topic until 3 years ago, where you have hedge funds that will put money into a plaintiff's litigation. A lot of it's big business versus big business because they can get a return on it. All we wanted to do, and we finally got it passed this year, was to disclose it, to disclose to the other side, not to the jury. I think it should be disclosed to the jury, but it would just disclose the other side so they start to understand motivations of what's driving the litigation. And there have been a lot of Wall Street Journal articles about where a company wanted to get out of the lawsuit, but their hedge fund said, no, we got to stay in it. Not making it up, right? So it's crazy. Election of the Supreme Court, I assume that's pretty popular here. Clap if you like it. Yes, and again, as a lawyer, I've dug deep into this for 10 or 12 years, that in previous roles, we advocated for a federal system to, the governor nominates, the Senate confirms, like we have for the appellate courts, but all the opponents, they did not want to compromise on anything. So we have you will have the right to vote a year and 2 months from now, 3 months from now, on electing Supreme Court. Are there some downsides to it? Yes. Are there downsides to the current system? Yes. Are there downsides to the federal system? Yes. There is no perfect way to do it, but I could probably have a presentation, the entire presentation on how things have been, and I'm going to say corrupted with a small c. We're not talking about legal, ethical things, but I love how the folks that defend the current system say it's not political. It's like, come on. There's someone on the Supreme Court right now who is the law partner of the former chair of the Democratic Party. Oh, but it's not political. Is there someone on the Supreme Court who's the law partner of the Republican Party? No. And so it's been I don't think they reflect my judicial philosophy. So I think it's going to be a good thing. Is it going to be perfect? No, there is no perfect thing. So I'm going to let William talk about modernization on LLC statutes and restrictive covenants. Like, this may sound very, very boring, but the stuff the legislature does matter, and it may not matter to you today, but it might in a year, or it might to one of your friends or family. So
these two bills, they were just simply updates to modernize Series LLC statutes in Kansas, and the restricted covenant, which is a separate section of the statute books in Kansas. It was just simply an update. We've heard from multiple employers of better ways to deal with restricted covenants and just to modernize the Series LLC statutes. And so it was just simply an update to the statutes.
And again, we'll take questions on all these. Healthcare is a cost driver for business. It is really hard to tackle, whether it's Medicare costs, Medicaid costs, liability. I'll get into liability. But one thing the Chamber has taken a lead on is lowering the burdens for occupational licensing. A lot of it is healthcare because there's so many occupational licenses in healthcare, but we are all of the above. We don't care whether it's a welder or a cosmetologist. We do not have any hair salons as members of the Chamber, and we don't have any cosmetologists, although I'm going to every time I speak publicly, I bring this up, and I'm going to keep doing it until it changes. So sometimes the occupational licensing issues are cartel keeping competition out of my occupation. It happens. For cosmetologists, it's all about the schools and tuition. In order to be a licensed cosmetologist in Kansas, it takes 1,500 clock hours of training. In New York State, home of, Donald Trump and Broadway stars and Wall Street stars, 400 hours. I've never gotten a good haircut, so this is not good. But our haircut's better in Kansas because of New York from a cosmetologist. I mean, it is driven by the schools. And so we are all of the above on lowering burdens to be able to be a professional. And sometimes that may be getting rid of an occupational license is probably too difficult, but we're looking at all the things that takes it, or don't create another license. And so the interstate compacts, basically, if you're a cosmetologist in Indiana, you're automatically one here in Kansas, regardless of the rules. But this is going to be an unending thing. And Kansas is ranked, the Institute for Justice, that may be a good person, Carl. They are really, really good on occupational licensing and property rights. This is all they think, live, and breathe. And they rank Kansas pretty good on occupational licensing. But why not be number one, like we're number 8? Because it is a business issue and it's a personal freedom issue in my view. So we were able to get those compacts done. William worked on that. I guess you could say it wasn't that difficult, or what hurdles did you have?
So originally we had 7 occupational licensing compacts we were planning to work on this year. With the shortened time frame in session, we could only go after 4. For some reason, the other 3, one was an APRN compact, and anytime you bring up APRNs in the State House, it becomes a contentious battle. Regardless if it's with scope of practice issues, doesn't matter. For some reason, those 4 letters make everyone on tense walk on eggshells in the State House. The compacts are just simply their Department of Defense initiatives. Kansas has passed 17 of the 19 available compacts, and they're just a simple tool to streamline the process for military spouses that are moving across state lines. But if you have your own independent practice and you want to expand your practice into other states, it's a tool for you to use that as well. Going on CRNA authorization, originally this bill was for independent practice privileges for CRNAs. APRNs received independent practice privileges 2022?
3 years ago, something, yeah.
Around 2022. So CRNAs were wanting to do that as well. Well, like I said, anytime you bring up independent practice privileges in Kansas for other occupations outside of doctors, it's a contentious battle. And we weren't able to get their full independent practice privileges this year, but with the bill that was passed, CRNAs can now prescribe and administer drugs, so it should help reduce some wait times for Kansans receiving health treatment. But
Occupational licensing it's like one of my personal issues. I really dig into. I like talking about it. My wife's an APRN, and I had all kinds of people criticizing me for my ethics. The chamber is taking this on. My wife owns her own business, and it made no impact on us. I said, "Oh yeah, so but I don't have any relative that's a cosmetologist or a dietitian or a welder. This is just something that I think is great for the economy and great for individuals." And doctors, what William was alluding to, they get very concerned about APRNs, and which I completely understand. But I've been working on this issue long before I was at the chamber. Interesting thing is I'm very data driven. What does the data say? Well, the health outcomes for primary care docs and APRNs are virtually the same. And there's been thousands of studies all over the globe. And I honestly was curious about that. Why would that be? And doing some more research, it's the diminishing returns of too much education. And I've said this to doctors. Are there any physicians in the room? I would still say it. 4 years of medical school and 3 years of residency, it's just, you don't need that much to be a primary care doctor. And APRNs are proving it, and PAs. And as a lawyer, people try to challenge me, well, should we not have a bar exam? It's like, I don't care. You're not going to win on this issue with me. Law school should be 2 years. That gets back to the tuition. And people will say, well, why do you think that is? Anybody who has an undergraduate degree know all the BS classes you took? You have those in law school too. So, yeah, I'll let you take these two.
Yeah. So education and workforce issues, the at-risk educational programs, this is a bill that actually impacts Wichita directly. So Phillips Fundamental Learning Center, I'm sure you all are aware of it, they provide programs for
Are you aware of it? The fantastic facility out east, like 143rd and 13th? It's awesome.
They provide those services for students with learning disabilities. Well, in order to provide those services, you have to be on the approved at-risk programs listed by the Kansas Department of Education. And the Kansas Department of Education took Phillips Fundamental Learning Center off those lists along with some other nonprofits. And so what this bill did is it simply just added them back onto the list. The Kansas Office of Early Childhood, this was actually the governor's bill that we worked alongside with her office on. Childcare has been a concern of the business community for several years now. There's a lack of access to it. It's not affordable for several Kansas families. So what this bill does is it creates the Office of Early Childhood, which consolidates state government positions working on childcare into one agency. Currently, right now, those positions are spread out across 4 different agencies. So in theory, it should make the state's response to childcare more efficient and in a more timely manner. We also supported it because there were several good deregulatory aspects within that bill, creating pilot programs and authorizing the Secretary of Health and Environment to study those pilot programs to see if the pilot programs do help open the access up to childcare. There's also a waiver that childcare facilities can apply for that waives certain statutory requirements within the first year just for them to get it started up and going. And then the last big deregulation aspect in there is that it allows a non-blood related person to watch up to 4 children, no more than 2 infants, for up to 35 hours a week. We tried to amend that to go to 40 hours since that's usually the average work week. But if you get to 40 hours, then it creates some federal requirements that require them to be licensed. So right now they can be unlicensed and watch up to 4 children for 35 hours a week. Regulatory sandboxes. This was a new idea out of Utah. What it does is it simply creates a office within the Attorney General's office, and businesses can apply to have certain regulations waived to test new products to see if these products could be beneficial to the marketplace. And so all it does is just streamlines innovation and businesses working together. Kansas is the 6th state, I believe, to pass the regulatory sandbox program. So it's just suspend certain regulations in a short time frame just to get new products up and going.
The thing that got it started in Utah, what I'm about to say, nobody will be surprised. I believe that Utah had a regulation that if you had a hot tub in a commercial setting, you had to have a lifeguard. And they didn't want to go through the process of having to repeal the reg, because that takes a long time. Let's just waive it, and now they repealed it. And I think it's going to take a while, but we're going to see some really interesting things that I think will lead to repeal of regs. Well, if we're waiving it for these 3 or 4 companies, let's just get rid of it. And so that should be a good thing. Want to look at the future. I try to think it's hard in my job because I have to deal with members who want stuff done today, but can't ignore future issues. And then how do we prepare for them? And some of them that I'll mention here, I don't know what we do. We just need to be paying attention. I mentioned the constitutional and the Supreme Court next year. Tort reform and liability. The Kansas Supreme Court 6 years ago made a ruling that there are no caps on non-economic damages. No caps. It could be $1 billion verdict. And we have not seen one of those nuclear bomb cases in Kansas, which I think speaks well to Kansans. Does that make sense? Like the juries are just not, they're going to award something normal. But that may take a veto override. And there are plenty of Republicans who get, in my view, a little soft on legal issues. But we have to address this because that nuclear bomb case is coming. Property taxes are, in my view, actually, Carl, I need to talk to you about that. It's hard for the state to address it because it's all driven here, almost all of it. And there are some appraisal reforms we could undertake at the state level. But ultimately what drives property taxes is your local governments, whether it's the city of May, city of Andover, city of Wichita, that sometimes I wonder, what are they spending all this money on? And we have the 2nd highest per capita local government employees in the country. 2nd. Again, that's not a good thing to be top 5. And I get a lot of pushback from local governments. Oh yeah, but no, this is number 2. That's not good. One thing that's different, yes, we have a lot of counties, but so do other states. We have a lot of cities. We have a lot of townships. And I know I'm talking about this. I'm sorry. I told William, you don't know where I'm going to go with my comments. So I grew up in Minnehaha Township, 21st and 127th, when there was nothing out there. So this is about 10 years ago, and that's well within the city limits. And I was driving by, which is now Textron on Central, near Central and the Webb, and I just kind of asked myself, wonder what happened to Minnehaha Township. So the service Minnehaha Township provided to me living in a rural area was, it was a sand road, so grading the sand twice a year and doing snow plowing, and then probably mowing and spraying the ditches during the summer. I am not kidding you, as I'm driving down Central, guess what came beside me? A brand new Suburban Minnehaha Township. And Minnehaha Township is there on Greenwich Road. And so that's another point, is like just the sheer scope and size of our local government. It's a lot of our history. But we have a lot of it, and we pay for it. The overall economy, we do okay. I don't care whether it's Sebelius, Brownback, Graves, or Kelly. We're kind of bumping along in the middle. Why is that? Why can't we do better? Healthcare cost, particularly aging population in a depopulating state that they need. Like I had a friend who's on the board of the Goodland Hospital, and he called me, and I thought he was calling me about Medicaid expansion because we're opposed. Like in my older age, I'm less diplomatic. I just don't want to engage in things I'm not changing my mind. Because hey, I'm not calling about Medicaid expansion. If we don't get more nurses and dietitians, et cetera, we are going to close. It has nothing to do with Medicaid expansion. So that's an issue. Depopulation, this is happening all over the world. I would say the Western world. And it's going to start happening in Africa and the Middle East countries at some point. But the challenge is you have two towns, which I need to go really study them, whose population is about half of what they were 50 years ago, like go from 20,000 to 10,000. That's not a shrink. That is a collapse. But guess what? They built streets, sidewalks, electricity, water, sewer. How do we handle this across the country? At some point, granted, Wichita keeps growing, some through annexation, but at some point, demographically, Wichita may not grow. And so you're going to have neighborhoods that no one lives in. I don't know what we do with them, but there's going to be a cost. We are very concerned about K-12 achievement. And I know that's an issue for you too, Joy. I don't know. It's kind of depressing sometimes, right? When you look at these test scores. And I also get very frustrated with the educational community getting very defensive about it. I don't blame a state or local school board member for the declining test scores. Can you at least just recognize that we have it and we need to do something about it? We're kind of in the middle to the bottom third on business startups and entrepreneurship. We have a lack of housing virtually everywhere in the state, not just rural Kansas, in Wichita and Topeka and Johnson County. I already mentioned the size and scope of local government, and then our state budget. Carl and I started talking about this 30 years ago. Carl, you and I failed. So it's like we spend more per capita on our state government than most states that are like us. I don't know why that is. It's very curious to me. I had an economist, Dr. Art Hall, who I think speaks to this group every once in a while, said, so it's been going on so long, it's not like the fat you just cut off, right? To use an analogy of a steak, it's like it's marbled into the meat. So it's kind of hard to take a scalpel, but we spend a lot of money. And, again, I'll say I get a little frustrated with excuses. I was talking to someone from the Brownback administration. So this would have been 10, 12 years ago about South Dakota. They don't have an income tax. And he said, yeah, but they get all that federal money for the Indian reservations. I said, is that really your answer? Because they spend less per capita on each of their citizens. So they're doing something good. Obviously, they're doing something better than we are. So I wouldn't say these are existential. I did mention water. A couple things on water. Wichita, I know, I read the articles. A conversation about converting wastewater to drinking water. A lot of people across the world have done it. It makes me a little queasy. But water is an issue all over the state. Western Kansas, when you get 15 inches of rain, that's a big issue. And then obviously you have the Ogallala, which I will say, when I started paying attention to water issues when I was at college at Wichita State, they were saying the Ogallala had 50 years. So now here it is 30 years later, and they're saying the Ogallala has 70 years. So I know it's an issue, but it does get a little old, the alarm stuff. But so you've got silting in of the reservoirs, which provide a lot of the water for urban Kansas, and it's really expensive. Like Lake Perry, which is close to Topeka, it's like half silted in. So the depth, I don't know, let's say it used to be 80 feet, now it's 40 because of silt. That is expensive to get out. And then the water treatment plants for rural Kansas, small towns, they simply can't afford it. So the governor, with our support and big legislative support, passed a task force. Yes, you can roll your eyes along with me, but I think there's some seriousness about water that they didn't always exist. And it's not a rural versus urban issue. There's a very interesting case that is pending in Western Kansas. The city of Hays bought a ranch in Western Kansas specifically to get those water rights. The ranchers in the area sued because it has to do with a certain amount of cubic feet of water over how much distance. And this is rural versus rural. I mean, Hays isn't that rural, but it's certainly not Wichita. So you got rural versus rural, and Hays cannot grow without more water. And if anybody's been to Hays, you go to the hotel there, oh, they have limited flush toilets, limited shower heads. They simply do not recruit any businesses, or they don't really like their business to expand that need water. If you're in Dodge City or Garden City, you're close to the aquifer, so you, like the Hillmark cheese plant, cheese takes a lot of water. So that is an issue that's not going to get solved tomorrow. It's kind of like our Social Security issue at the national level. It's going to get solved, and it's going to be painful, but the world is not ending tomorrow. So with that, happy to close, maybe get you guys out of here early and answer any questions.
Thank you, Alan.
Yes, got two here.
I'm going to get the mic back to you and go some questions for you
Yeah.
out there, okay?
Yeah.
So first, hold your hands up high if you have any questions, and I'll come around and give you.
How did we get here? What you guys mentioned today is 10, 15 new programs, agencies, departments, offices. Unbelievable. They're just growing, growing, growing. I grew up at 48 to 70. How did we have 5% of what we have today in the coming years? This is absolutely crazy.
It is.
We need a reset. That's what comes to it. We need a total reset.
Well, I think the Office of Early Childhood Education does create something, but it combines a bunch of stuff into one office. There will be fewer employees. Some of the stories I heard were just crazy about the duplication. And that if you want to start a child care business, you had to get permits from 5 different agencies, which takes forever. But I also say, Melissa Rooker, former Republican legislator from Johnson County, she kind of led the effort. And I've been talking to her about this for 2 or 3 years. She said, oh, there's lots of duplication. And in fact, we're going to cross-train. As an example, I believe it used to be the rules that in order to start a child care, you had to have a certified fire marshal say it's safe. And child care facilities are not fire dangerous, right? So they lowered that and allowed some people to get cross-trained that it's good enough. But I also said, oh, this is awesome. We're getting rid of all this duplication. How many jobs are we going to save? Well, we can't propose any because of the public employees unions. I said, Melissa, you're going to get skewered in that hearing by both Republicans and Democrats. So that was a bit of the compromise with this bill. William can correct me. There's no specific FTE reductions, but that was, yes, we are going to have them. So at least that's something. But yes, it's, government, we need government to protect us at all. But this is a good start. I mean, it's good progress.
Okay, Alan, over here.
Yes.
6.5 years ago, our governor inherited a $900 million surplus. In this 6.5 years, the government's gone up 75%, and next year we got a $600 million shortfall. Does the chamber offer any guidance to our reps and senators? Instead of using a scalpel, it looks like we need to use it.
Although I think a scalpel used 1,000 places, but yes, it's not that bad, but it's bad. And I do feel like for the first time in a while, legislators of both parties, I will give credit to Henry Helgerson, a Democrat here in Wichita. He might be the most vocal person about we cannot sustain this. And we do have a very big rainy day fund, like a $1.8 billion. Now, rainy day funds, if you're a fiscal conservative, you can argue both sides, right? Where it's fiscally responsible, but yet that's still our taxpayer money. Why do we have it over here instead of back to us? But the short answer is it's a challenge for the chamber to weigh in on budget stuff. It is on my mind all the time because if we advocate for tax cuts, where do you want it cut from? I finally got to a point, I was tired of the question. I said, look, if the state of Kansas wants to contract out their budget process to the state chamber, we'll do it. But you're not going to like our budget. So it is and there are some things that probably need to be funded more. I don't know, something that's working. But then get rid of it, take this money from over here and there. So short answer is it is a concern, and we need to do more and provide some guidance to the legislators, and maybe sometimes give them political cover. Like it's okay to cut this. I would say legislators, I kind of wish someone were here because I was being critiqued by legislators when I criticized them. Like, was that overboard? But legislators don't like doing things that cause public criticism, which I understand. Politicians don't. But sometimes you're making 50 people mad, 50. and it's still the best thing. And you're going to be reelected, even though you did this thing. But I think that may be another topic, Carl, just the state budget, where it was, where it's gone. It just kind of bumps along a little above inflation, but then over 10 years, Carl and I were really working on this, I feel like 20 years ago. So sometimes I don't want to get myself depressed, but what if the state budget 20 years ago had only increased 1% above inflation of population, which is still more than it probably should? We'd be in great shape. And so the time, like, when's the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. Second best time is today. And I think it applies to the state budget.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. So on the property tax front and just the growth of government, it seems like one of the solutions, I guess, would be a lot of consolidation. We've got 105 counties. Those are county government, city government, township, what you went through. I know they're having some serious discussions, maybe for the first time in a long time, about consolidation of services here among the city and the county. I'd just love to see total consolidation entirely. I don't know why we're paying for county services both. Like, let's just have one government and be done with it. But is there a model that you've seen with other states similarly structured like Kansas that have gone to consolidation? And I know our Western Kansas folks would probably hate all that, but we can't speak out of both sides of our mouth. We can't complain about the property taxes, which continue to go up, and not be willing to do something about it, which is consolidation and modernizing government.
Agreed. And I would say I'm a taxpayer too. Like, we want lower taxes, but more government services, that we're just human beings. There's not a lot of great state models. There are some local models. The unified government in Wyandotte County, in my view, has a mixed record, but it's still better than it was. You have Nashville-Davidson County. You have some local state consolidation. And then you have some combined services. I'd say where I live in Topeka now, it's the city of Topeka and Shawnee County combined their parks. I assume it saved money. I don't know, but it's a lot easier. I feel like things are going better with that. But also, it is not just a rural issue. I was talking about this, the former mayor of Roland Park. Do you know where Roland Park is in northeast Johnson County? Northeast Johnson County has got a lot of these small town, their cities, their urban areas that have 5,000 people. Why does Roland Park exist? Why can't Roland Park merge with Westwood Hills? And William grew up in Leavenworth County, which is not Johnson County, but is closer. And look, you folks in Central County, you're not immune. Why does the city of Park City exist? Keachai, Bel Air, Goddard, Mays, Derby, I can make an exception for. It's a big enough city, but it's not just a rural issue. For those urban, it really you only have Wyandotte and Johnson and Wichita that have, or Central County that have those. There's no other city that borders in Topeka that borders the city limits. These are tough conversations. Is the mayor of Bel Air here? I'm sure I would be skewed, but I think it's a fair question. I mean, seriously. Yes, sir.
Might be a tough question. When you consolidate from two into one, what services do you give up? Where do you save the money?
Well, it should be an administration, and that doesn't always happen. I mean, you don't need two park directors. You don't need two fire marshals, and hopefully it could and should be more efficient.
What percent of the budget is that?
It's, I don't know. I mean, it depends on the local.
We got-
So he's asking, what efficiencies would you get by combining and how much? I don't know. It depends on the specific area. I'll go back to a township issue where I live. I live in the city limits of Topeka, very southwestern edge. There's a township headquarters with a bunch of fire engines that's less than a mile from my house. Why can't Shawnee County do this? Like, would there be savings? Absolutely. Are you gonna see it? Are you gonna feel it? I don't know. Other thing, and now I'm thinking about Shawnee County, on my property tax bill, I get a mill levy for the school, city, county, nothing unusual. Library district? The hell is that? We have a metropolitan authority district that I pay taxes for, and I'm missing a sixth one. But why can't the city of Topeka just manage the airport? And then I found, I won't say his name, some of you would know him. He was the city council member when the city of Topeka did this. because they wanted those entities to raise taxes without them having any political blowback. So I don't think Sedgwick County you have that, but yes, there's going to be savings. How much? I don't know. And it ultimately depends on the local civil servants. They know how to be more efficient. And sometimes we Republicans, right of center folks can denigrate civil servants. They're the ones that are going to probably solve it. They know how to do it better. But that's the ultimate question, and it's a fair question.
Okay, got another question for you.
Should we just call it the city of Sedgwick County and make it one big city?
There you go.
That was facetious.
I know, I don't know.
Well, I don't know, I think it's a pretty good idea. Yeah, if you don't cut taxes, you gotta get rid of stuff. And two things that I don't like are housing, because every time the government gets involved in that, it turns into trash bins. And then childcare. Whatever happened to the family taking care of the kids they brought into the world?
Those are some existential questions that are not part of the chamber agenda about two parents working. But no, but the reality is the members that we have, they have childcare issues for their employees. But don't disagree. Like, I could probably piss everybody off in the room with various opinions on it, but it's a fair point. But it is an issue for employers, whether you're government, nonprofit, or private sector.
Okay, got a question here?
Thank you. In regards to a couple of your bullet points up there, I own a company that manufactures military-grade unmanned aircraft. I'm the guy that actually did the video about the drones out on the East Coast and how they're looking for nuclear warheads.
Congratulations, that's great.
I'm trying to scale my company here in Wichita, and I'm currently manufacturing the majority of the aircraft in Warsaw, Poland, and I'm trying to move all the manufacturing back here, which we're steadily doing. But in regards to the entrepreneurs, what is the city of Wichita and the Chamber of Commerce, what kind of partnership situations do you have that can help companies like mine who are trying to scale and become more deeply embedded into the city of Wichita?
The State Chamber of Commerce, we are focused on policy statewide. And so it's hard, like if you could pass a bill that creates more entrepreneurs, we'll do it. But it's usually getting rid of things or making it easier. And I think entrepreneurship is a tough one, right? If there was a chemical you'd put in the water instead of fluoride that created more entrepreneurs, we would do it. So we look at policy, and that the regulatory sandbox is actually kind of driven by entrepreneurship, but it doesn't apply just to startups. So it's a good question, a tough question. But I think so much entrepreneurship is also so locally focused. What is the city of Wichita doing? What is the city of May doing? What is Wichita State doing to help? Or, I mean, we all know plenty of business leaders, business entrepreneurs that they didn't go ask for help. They just did it. But yes, there are certainly regulatory hurdles, et cetera. So I don't have a great answer for you. I think you ought to keep asking, and particularly your local folks. One thing I'd say, that believe it or not, entrepreneurship and workforce they remind me of things where you have all these entities doing stuff. And is anybody Network Kansas does a great job. They funds the last end of funding. You have banks that do good jobs, but you have all these programs, and do we have too many? And can someone evaluate them? Workforce is an example. I've been at the Chamber 8 years, and this is the first issue I kind of was confronted with. And there's so many different things that pop up we're going to address. It's like, let's just stop all of this and figure out what's working and go do it. You have nonprofits that do it. You have, obviously, government. You have tech colleges. Wichita State Tech is actually one of the better examples in the state. But you have all these different things. You have school boards that do things that may not be good for Wichita State Tech. You have the regents, and you have Wichita State, then you have these school boards. Nobody's in charge. And I feel like workforce is a little different than entrepreneurship, because workforce, I would say, education workforce is a public good. The question is who's the best to provide it. One thing I didn't mention, I think you're going to see a bigger move to school choice in Kansas. and you have a lot of other states doing it. And we support, the Chamber is all of the above. Better public schools, better private schools, homeschool, we don't care. Just do better. And but I'd also say, and I've talked to KPI about this, the reality is no matter how much school choice increase we have, 80% of kids are going to public schools. So we can't, these are not either or. You can do both. And I get really frustrated by the anti-school choice folks who say any of us that support school choice, we want to destroy, not harm, destroy public schools. It's like, no, they're just, we need it all. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question, sorry.
Question, Alan, back here?
Yes.
Hey, thanks for coming today. Hey, the crisis, a lot of times is opportunity. We're in the middle of a drought. Our lakes are really, really low. Half of them are silted full. But a lot of that silt is really valuable. It could be potting soil, it could be all kinds of other stuff. You ask somebody, hey, can I go out and bulldoze while it's open? Oh, we're not prepared for that. Okay, what does it take to get prepared for that?
That is a great question, and I'm going to get some answers on that. It never occurred to me.
Chamber of Commerce get a plan to be ahead of these kind of things so that maybe you can incubate some businesses to come in and take care of some of these things. Because we don't know what the next opportunity might be, but there's going to be another crisis similar to this that we could take advantage of.
I'm going to ask some questions, and I'll get back to Carl if I get any answers. Because when talked about the reservoirs that we're silting in, the two things are both very expensive. You get some kind of dredger, right, that digs it up under the water, or you get a very high pressure thing that blows the silt out underneath the dam. But guess what that does? It goes into the river, which, like the city of Topeka, our main water source is the Kansas River. It's not, of course, where does the river come from? Lake Perry, or not Lake Perry, but Tilford, Milford, and Tuttle. Good question. I am going to follow up on that. That's a great idea.
Okay, last question from John.
I do not. I thought part of my agreement was I do not take questions from John.
You said okay. Missouri Senate yesterday failed to pass a bill.
I am glad you asked this.
There you go. In order to save or do anything to keep the Chiefs and Royals, I'm curious what your thoughts are. The Kansas Star Bonds Initiative has a few months left before it expires. I'm a Broncos fan, so I don't really care. But are there a chance that the Chiefs or the Royals move to Kansas?
I believe there's a chance, and I would guess it's a higher chance that one or the other moves to Kansas. Sports teams are really the economics aren't great. And one thing I didn't like in the debate last summer was, yes, if a sports team that moves to an area, it does not grow the economy. It just doesn't. But the Chiefs going from Missouri to Kansas, in my view, is a different economic thing because they're already there, right? And believe it or not, I believe the state of Missouri gets like $30 million a year in income tax because of the athletes. Because if you're a visiting athlete, you play at Arrowhead, you pay 1/16 of your salary. So the economics are different. But it is a lot of fuzzy esoteric stuff. You know, like, oh, well, okay, what value does Kansas get for having the Chiefs or the Royals? It may end up being a wash economically. But is there some prideful things? I was very surprised when we had this conversation with my board about a year ago, how many Wichita area folks said, well, one way or another, we need them in the Kansas City area because they, San Antonio and other places, because it was a quality of life for folks in Wichita. I did not expect that, but it appears there's a good chance that one or both come over to Kansas, and there's plenty of land, and I don't know about plenty of land, but there's some interesting proposals. I would guess one of them. Do you have any other info on that?
No, I think you're going to see a decision here by the end of June, just for construction to start. But I mean, the Royals, there was rumored at the old Sprint campus. Well, a company's moving into there, so that's the only actual pieces of ground that I've heard of rumors. But yeah,
there was. Some of the proposals have been, if you've been to the Legends area and the Speedway, there's actually quite a bit of land east of 435 And then there were some interesting proposals for down on the bottoms, which is like across the Kansas River from Kemper Arena. There were some very interesting proposals that like the infield would be in Kansas, the outfield would be in Missouri. I don't know how those athletes then, how do they split their income taxes between, but I don't know that that's going to happen. But I guess I'd say, I think for me as a sports fan, I think it'd be kind of cool. Can I put any dollar, but does the world end if they move or don't move? They don't. It doesn't. I mean, I'm fairly confident neither are moving out of the Kansas City area. And granted, for me in Topeka, I'm an hour away. It's a lot easier. But I don't know how many Wichita friends I have that have season tickets to the Chiefs. It's like, that just sounds like way too much work. 6-hour round trip drive, or even if you spend the night. But it's kind of fun to watch.
If we could have a fifth and first state there in the stadium, we could have 2 more senators.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, I don't think we'll forgive John, but, consider the source. Let's give these two a round of applause.
Thank you.